Happy St. Patrick's Day, and on this particular holiday, I'm going to talk about really the only movie I can think of that even comes close to this holiday, even though St. Patrick's Day is not the main focus. From 1993, now 23 years old, holy shit, the horror comedy cult classic, Leprechaun. Now, Leprechaun, I first saw this movie about, 11 years ago when I was 10. I think I caught it on the Sci-Fi Channel, back when it still had the proper Sci-Fi logo. And back then, this movie did scare me, because I was a 10-year-old kid. Just about anything would scare me. Here, funny story. I don't even think I was 10 at the time. While I was going through this video store I used to go to a lot, I passed through the horror section and I caught all the Child's Play, Chucky movies on display. I couldn't sleep for a week after seeing those covers. Now I own, can't see it, but I own pretty much all the Child's Play movies now. But anyway, before I get too off track, not like that hasn't happened before, let's talk about Leprechaun. Leprechaun is a horror comedy that many people are mixed on. A lot of people see it as a pretty bad film. A lot of people see it as a really fun film. And nowadays, as I said, it's a cult classic. What's the story? An Irishman named Dan O'Grady comes home from Ireland with a bag of gold coins, which he says he got from a leprechaun, who he caught and got him to show him where his gold is. And then all of a sudden, the leprechaun shows up where he lives in North Dakota. And it turns out this leprechaun is not happy and cheery or singy. He is grotesque, really meat-faced, and he is evil, and he will do anything to get his gold back, including brutally murdering several people in the process. And Dan O'Grady tries to kill him, but has a stroke before he can go through with it. But he was able to lock the leprechaun in a crate. And 10 years go by, and a father and his bitchy daughter move into the house. And while it's being renovated by this group of painters played by Ken Olent as Nathan Murphy, Mark Holton as Ozzy, and Robert Hy Gorman as Alex. And while all this is going on, the one known as Ozzy, who is... It's unclear exactly what is up with Ozzy. He's a pretty big idiot. He's real stupid, real childlike. And I guess what the movie was going for is he's supposed to be retarded, but watching this character, you know, this guy is not retarded. He is stupid, but he's too childlike to be a stupid man, and he speaks too clearly and has too much a sense of what's going on to really be retarded. I guess you could just sum it up to bad writing. And Leprechaun has a lot of bad writing. But as I was saying, Ozzy unintentionally lets the leprechaun loose out of the crate, and he now goes after everybody trying to find his gold. And for the first half of the film, most of the characters are unaware that there is a evil leprechaun among them. And once they do find out that there's a leprechaun trying to kill them, the film pretty much goes the Night of the Living Dead route, where all the characters are shacked up in a small house, and they try to fend off for their lives and keep the little green fucker out. Now, with a plot like that, you gotta immediately assume this is gonna be fucking terrible. But, surprisingly, it's a pretty enjoyable film. Yes, it's really stupid, but in my opinion, the film is pretty self-aware in just how stupid it is, just how out there it is. I mean, it's called Leprechaun. Only a complete idiot would make this film without realizing we gotta make fun of ourselves for it. And as far as being a horror comedy goes, it, for the most part, works. It's not scary, but the comedy is actually pretty enjoyable. The jokes just made me laugh. And there are a few scenes where they try to do the horror straightforward, try to do it seriously, and that's when the film is at its worst, because given the setup and how they handle all the comedy scenes, the scenes where they try to be scary just feel out of place, and they're really not that good. The director of Leprechaun, Mark Jones, I think he was good at doing the self-aware comedy and sort of satirizing, because the times Leprechaun feels like a satire of the slasher films in general, but then it has these serious moments where it just feels uneven. The tone shifts at times throughout the film, and it's when that happens that you really just think this is bad. And even focusing on the horror comedy bits, it's still not that great of a film. I mean, it's not high caliber. This is a movie that if you were channel surfing and you caught on TV, like I did when I was little, you would sit around just to see how it ended, and by the end you think, that was dumb, but I had a good time. That's the kind of feeling I think people will get when they watch Leprechaun, because it is a really fun ride, just at times it's really painful. And if you're wondering if the director of Leprechaun, Mark Jones, did anything else, he also directed Rumpelstiltskin, Quiet Kill, Triloquist, and Scorned. Never heard of those movies? Me neither. I just found out about them when I was doing research on the guy. And from what I read, the making of this movie had a few creative issues. One story is that originally Leprechaun was supposed to be a kids' scary film, kind of like Goosebumps, but it was decided at some point to make it more adult, make it R-rated, so they add some graphic gore scenes. And I admit, the gore in this movie is pretty good. It's nothing special, it's not like Tom Savini worthy, but it's pretty fun, gross gore, and very bloody, and I like that. Another story about the creative process that went into making Leprechaun is that Mark Jones wanted it to be a straight horror film, but Warwick Davis insisted that they have more comedy in it. And I think that was a good move, really do, but at the same time you can see the parts where they're trying to do the serious horror, and those parts just fail. I mean, I can see some elements there, like camera angles, where they're trying to set up some tension, and maybe one or three instances, it does sort of work, but the feeling of it working only lasts for a few seconds, because you remember, this is Leprechaun. There are some horror comedies that can be self-aware in just how silly they are, but still manage to be scary at times. Reanimator, this movie ain't. And as far as there being any tense scenes that actually work, there's a scene where the Leprechaun kills an antique store owner because the guy had one of his coins, and he kills him by... Okay, this is the comedy part, but I'll get to the part that actually I thought worked as far as horror related. The Leprechaun kills him by getting a pogo stick and bouncing up and down the guy's chest. But before that happens, we see the shop owner kind of going around his store, trying to find information on this coin he has. And he hears some noise, looks around. But once again, it's not really executed too well. But I will admit, that was the scare part of the film that I thought worked the best. One other thing about Leprechaun that I think did not work was the music. I've talked about how I feel a music score is a very important element to a movie. Unless you're going to be artsy or creative, in which you try to go without music, but the music score in a horror movie is what I feel really helps make it scary. And next to the filmmaking being less than adequate, the music score for Leprechaun, in my opinion, is just terrible. It's just so goofy and cheap sounding. Yeah, that's the best term. It sounds fucking cheap. Just awful. I can't... It's hard to describe just how bad the score is. Like, even for the scenes that are meant to be comedic, the music is still the weakest part. Music by Kevin Kiner. It's spelled K-I-N-E-R. He did a bad job. And the editing. The editing is, for the most part, a very clunky mess throughout this film. Just about every cut in this film feels awkward. Like, you see a shot on one person, cuts to the other. Just for those simple moments, which happen a lot throughout the film, it just feels... I don't want to say lazy. It's just... The people who made this film were not very good at their jobs, in my opinion. Not trying to be mean, just telling it as it is. Just saying what I see. Okay. I swear, I do like Leprechaun, but I'm just pointing out the problems it has first. For all the problems that this film has, you can really look past them at the good parts, the enjoyable parts. But something I noticed that could really kill it for people seeing it the first time are the opening credits. The opening this may be an odd thing to think may kill the viewing experience, but let me explain. You know how some movies will play their credits over a scene that's happening, like the first scene of the movie, as opposed to having the credits first and then the scene? And the best way to describe why this doesn't work, it's distracting. I mean, if characters are just talking and then they walk and in between the dialogue bits you see the credits, that can work. But the way Leprechaun does it, I mean, there's some action in its very first few minutes, and during the action bits, we see the credits. It kind of ruins the mood of the scene. You see the Leprechaun running around the house, acting all silly, and you hear gunshots going off. And then you see makeup by... Just, why keep it going like this? And during the dialogue bits in the opening, the names of the cast keep appearing. I just thought the opening this is some of the worst opening credits I've seen in a movie, and it felt almost like I was watching a direct-to-video movie. And if anyone is feeling surprised, yes, Leprechaun got a theatrical release. And that kind of is a little surprising, because it feels more like a straight-to-video movie. I mean, yes, there are straight-to-video movies that are fun, but I don't know, I mean, this had to have been back when straight-to-video had not yet become that popular method of releasing movies. I don't know, I just think it's interesting that it got released in theaters. And if anyone's wondering, the budget was $900,000. Pretty reasonable budget, and watching it, I can totally see how they could pull it off with that budget. And something good to give to this movie is the special effects, although cheap looking, are very impressive for a less than $1 million budget film. Yeah, it's one of those horror films where, while the story and characters may not be the strongest, the special effects are impressive. Yeah, that kind of like Friday the 13th. The special effects in Leprechaun, I definitely give it a B+. Now it's time to move on to the cast. I miss doing this. First, I'll get to the human characters. The father and his daughter who move into the house where the leprechaun is hidden. The dad is played by John Sanderford. Never saw him in anything else. And his bitchy, whiny daughter, who does not like moving into the country. She wants to live in, I guess, fancy hotels. Just places that are not rural or... She is played by, get this, sit down in case you do not know about this. The daughter, Tori Redding, is played by Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, Leprechaun was Jennifer Aniston's very first movie role, and as far as I could see and as far as I've read, it's her only pre-Friends role. I'm not the biggest fan of Jennifer Aniston. I really haven't seen that many movies with her, and I've never watched Friends, at least directly. I've caught snippets of it on TV, and my mom used to watch it a lot, but I never got into it, and as I've gotten older, I just don't like TV anymore, and I don't generally watch television or that much. And I really, really have come to hate sitcoms. Most sitcoms. There's a few that are okay, but most part I hate them. And I thought she was good in Bruce Almighty. But how is she in her first role? I have hated her performance in this for a long time. Mainly because all she is a whiny little bitch. That's all she does in this film. She's kind of snobby, very stuck up, and one of the painters who's renovating the house, Nathan, played by Ken Oland, he serves as her they're the generic couple of this horror film. And there's a moment where he uses, I guess, reverse psychology in a way where he acts all sexist, saying, of course girls can't do this, to get her to stay at the house when she wants to leave. And she's like, this is the 90s, women can do things men can do too. I find Jennifer Aniston's role in this to be very badly done. She bitches and whines, she acts like she's above everything, and then she acts like she can handle on her own, and then she can't. At this point, after seeing Leprechaun many times, it wasn't written that well, and Mark Jones, as I've said, he's not the most competent director, so maybe that led into it. I have seen her give a good performance, but I don't know, it was her first movie, maybe she hadn't gotten the hang of it yet. Just her character is pretty off and just annoying, and when she cries, it's that kind of cry, it's kind of woman crying that just makes you go, ugh. And I don't know if anyone else will think this, but she looks pretty weird in her first role. What do I mean by she looks weird? She has I don't know if anyone else thinks this. I honestly don't think Jennifer Aniston is that attractive. I have a very specific idea of what I think is attractive, but the way she looks in this film, she has a very roundish face, and the way her cheeks are set up, she looks like a fucking gopher. Yeah, that may sound odd, but watch Leprechaun and really look at her face in the close-up shots, and the parts where she's crying, just going, I don't like her in this. But after rewatching Leprechaun before this review to get myself familiar with it again, I did notice for the first time, in her first scene where she's wearing kind of a low-cut dress, she does have some nice legs. And then throughout the majority of the film, she wears these jean shorts that are so tight, you could easily end up thinking that her skin had been replaced by fabric. And Ken Oland, he plays a good, pretty boy. In fact, he's pretty sexy in this. He's got great hair and his muscles, like he wears a sleeveless shirt for his first few scenes. His arms are pretty well developed. Yeah, I thought they were pretty good. But other than that, he's just the stereotypical pretty boy you see in a horror film. And surprisingly, he does not die. Yeah, something interesting about Leprechaun is, despite being a more or less slasher film, it's got a pretty low body count. How many deaths do you think there are in Leprechaun? 4. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have good death scenes and the gore effects aren't up to speed, but yeah, I just thought for an over-the-top idea of a killer leprechaun, I was expecting a bit higher on the body count. And as a, I guess, couple, the Nathan and Tori characters are pretty bland, pretty not interesting. They have this scene in a diner where he tries to get her to have some food because she says she's starving, but she doesn't want to eat meat or fat or carbs, you know, that kind of stereotypical bullshit. And then he yanks off her shoe, talking about it being made of leather, I guess. Just badly done. A scene we've seen hundreds of times. Something I want to bring up. The part where they go into town, like in the middle of the film, the main characters all go into town, and then they come back, and that's when they meet the leprechaun finally. But when they're in town, like it's implied it's nighttime, it's very late, they're in the diner, and we cut back and forth between them and the leprechaun, and at one point when we cut back to them in the diner, you can clearly see out the window, it's daytime. I'm assuming this is just a continuity error, but when I first saw that when I was younger, I thought that meant, have they been there all fucking night? And then when we go back to the leprechaun and they get home and they find out he's there, we see that it's night. This is just a continuity error, I'm sure of it, but at the time I was like, wait, what? How long have they been out there? It's just something that got to me as a kid. But enough of the bland, uninteresting, well-defined couple. Let's move on to the other two painter characters. The other two who work with Nathan, who I'm not sure if they're his family, or at least one of them is Ozzy, played by Mark Holton, who I talked about earlier, and Alex, who is a 10-year-old boy, I think. Anyway, he's a little kid, and you may know the actor Robert Hy Gorman as the bratty little shit boy from the Hulk Hogan early 90s comedy Mr. Nanny. I don't know why I said you may remember. Who remembers that movie? Does anybody remember that movie? I've seen that movie. Anyway, Robert Hy Gorman, he's a pretty annoying child actor, and I mean, yes, he's a little kid, and I'm not one of those people that thinks you shouldn't call out a kid's acting just because they're a kid. In my opinion, if a kid's acting sucks, it sucks. But Robert Gorman, he was bad in the last movie he was in, but in Leprechaun, it's not good, but I can tell when watching him, he was doing what he was directed to do. Once again, the character writing in this is not that good. And I guess he's not bad in the sense that he's annoying. He has an annoying, airy, wheezy voice, like, what's going on? But what really gets to me about his performance here is the fact it's one of those roles where the kid speaks more like an adult than some of the other adults, or speaks in a way that not even adults speak. Kind of like Matrix-style dialogue. Just like, what the fuck are you saying and what fucking planet are you from? He's not great, but he's not that bad either. Just some of his dialogue is pretty odd and does not sound anything like what a little kid says. And Mark Holton as Ozzy. I talked about how his performance is supposed to be a retarded man, but it doesn't really feel like an actual mentally retarded person. You look at him, you don't feel like he's handicapped at all. And you think, like, there are some people who are not mentally challenged, but you can tell that they're stupid, like an asshole who says stupid things. But he's not that. Like, I don't know what to call this character. Just, I think this is just a unique, stupid character, at least for me. And despite these characters being not written well, Ozzy and Alex are, aside from the Leprechaun, who I will get to soon, I promise, they are the best characters in this movie. Mark Holton, he is really a pretty lovable actor. Mark Holton, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a very big man, has to be like 6 feet, weighs maybe 300 pounds, big fat guy. And if anyone knows him from anything, cult fans may know this, he was Michael J. Fox's basketball teammate Chubby. Yes, that was the character's name, from the movie Teen Wolf. The 1985 movie, not that show that's going on. And Mark Holton, he's pretty lovable. I watch him and he's just so friendly and nice, and he does a pretty good job. And even though it's not a well-written character, Holton, and with his gullible personality and his nice guy acting, he won me over. And by the end, he was the only character who I did not want to see die. And I really cared about this character. And it's all owed to Mark Holton. And the chemistry Ozzy and Alex have, at times it's not good because once again, this is a kid character who's written with the dialect you'd expect from something like The Matrix. Not total Matrix style, but at times you can see the cute friendship these two have, and overall, they were the best characters in my opinion. It's a shame my birthday's not until the 27th. Then I'd already be 21 and I could put some whiskey in this and have this coffee traditional Irish style. Oh, by the way, just to let you know some more stuff about me, I'm part Irish. Not a main part of me or my life, just a fact. Hey, don't let the name Crawford fool you. I got a lot of nationalities and ethnicities in me. And now to talk about the little man himself, Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis, he is one of the best dwarf actors in Hollywood, and it's a shame he didn't get more parts over the years. I mean, yes, he has the Leprechaun movies and Willow, but other than that, most of the time he's been a, for lack of a better term, small-time actor. And there isn't much to say about his performance in the Star Wars movies because pretty much anybody could do an Ewok. But then there's the movie where he was the lead, Willow. And I know Willow's a movie a lot of people are kind of mixed on, but personally, I fucking love Willow. Yeah, I got it when I was 13 for my birthday, and I don't get why people shit on that movie so much. I think Willow's a pretty solid fantasy action movie. It's a good movie that most people of all ages can watch. It has pretty damn awesome effects. Warwick Davis gives a great performance. Val Kilmer is awesome in it. Just has a lot of kick-ass bitchin' shit. Awesome bitchin' shit. Very 80s. And after Willow, his first lead role was Leprechaun. And I read that Warwick Davis was a little unsure of the movie after it first came out. But with all the popularity it's gained, and he has come to think of it as one of his personal favorites. Why else would he do 5 fucking sequels? Yeah, if anyone is not a fan of Leprechaun, it had 5 sequels. And I'll be honest, I have not seen all of them. I've seen 2 Leprechaun movies. The first 2, and the others I have yet to see, mainly because now that I am an adult, I've had a lot of very gritty films I've been trying to get to see. Because Brad Jones spoke so highly of it, but back to this. Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun, he is having the time of his life. He's putting, I'm not sure he's putting his all into it, but he's putting a lot into this character that is, for the most part, very stupid in this very stupid movie. But Warwick Davis, he is just, you could not say he was on fire anymore unless you set him literally on fire. He does this great, silly Irish accent, and he's like, "I want me gold now! Oh, pity. Your wife makes a fine pot of tea, Danny me boy." Just, I can't do the voice like him. I'm not British. I don't have such a high-pitched voice. But he does a great psychotic Irish accent. And he is just, he's bouncing all over the place. He's just wild. The Leprechaun in this film, he's just like, "Tiddly diddly dee!" And one of the funniest moments is when Nathan has a shotgun, and the guy playing Nathan, he really gets intense during the scenes where he tries to kill the Leprechaun. He's like, "Die! We got him!" Just guy trying too hard in a movie where no one should be trying that hard. And Warwick is, the Leprechaun gets on a skateboard and zooms by everybody, and they're trying to shoot him, and he's like, "Wah!" And then at one point he's like, "Boo!" I may look crazy, but I'm just reenacting the funny shit I saw in this film. And a very funny scene that Warwick does is when he's in the house and he's by himself and he's searching through cabinets trying to find the gold, and he finds a box of cereal labeled Lucky Clovers. And okay, I gotta explain this. Originally the box was Lucky Charms, but the actual Lucky Charms, or the company that owns Lucky Charms, did not want their product associated with this, I guess, dark horror film. And the filmmakers were forced to go back and reshoot it and call it, and they put in this fake cereal called Lucky Clovers. And it's funny, and what's funnier is when the leprechaun looks at it, he's like, ah, ha ha, and then he puts a bunch in his mouth, and he's like, I like that part. It's a good silly laugh. And fun story about how the film crew were not allowed to use Lucky Charms. Having to go back and reshoot the scene where the leprechaun eats the cereal was expensive for the production team because they'd already wrapped filming at that point, and pissed off at the company for doing this. They went back and reshot the climax of the film, and where the little boy is the one who delivers the next to last final blow that gets the leprechaun, and he says the film's hasta la vista type line, "Fuck you, Lucky Charms." They put that in just as a way of saying, yeah, fuck you. It's a little confusing, but when you know the story, it makes a bit more sense, and it makes it even funnier. And while I love Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun, and I know this is a stupid film, but it's, as I said, mostly self-aware, there was one part, even though I was able to suspend all my disbelief to get into this goofy movie, there was one part that always got me. It's when the main characters are locked in the house, and they're trying to keep the Leprechaun out, and he constantly tries to get in. Now, the Leprechaun, I guess you could say, is kind of like a low-grade Freddy Krueger, because he has supernatural powers, and he can do a bunch of stuff. He can close doors, he can teleport. Yeah, he can teleport, but he ends up being blocked out of the house many times, and then he appears inside the house, and then they throw him out, and they hide in the house for about what appears to be 20 minutes on end. But then he appears again, sometimes inside, sometimes outside. And my thought is, what stops him from just going right back in after they throw him out? Like, why does he play the game, these cat and mouse games? Why doesn't he just go right in the house and stay in the fucking house? I don't get it. Why is he sometimes able to go in and out? Why is he sometimes able to disappear and then reappear? At one part, he runs at the house and they slam a door on his hand, and it literally cuts the hand off, sends it on the floor, and as he's outside with a bloody stump, the severed hand crawls right up the door and opens it, allowing him to reach in and grab it. And what does he do after he gets the door open and gets his hand back? He runs away right into the yard. Okay, I know I'm probably reading too deep into this, and I haven't read too deep into it so far, but I'm just wondering, why does he not just apparate? Why doesn't he just appear? Why doesn't he just zap himself in? He can do that, so why does he have to try and bang down the doors? It's the one part of the film that bugs me, the inconsistency of his fucking powers. Okay, last part I'll mention. There's a scene where he magically teleports himself into the, under the hood of a truck, and then he crawls out and tries to get into the truck by smashing the windshield and reaching in, and they push him away. Once again, why the fuck doesn't he just teleport himself in there? Why doesn't he just go in? I don't get it. It's a good, fun, mind-fucking moment. And two other scenes that really made me laugh is this part where he assembles a car out of scraps of metal. I'm not sure how he gets it to run, but he builds a car out of like cans, and he goes, "Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes," and then he just rams it into this truck, which is 10 times the size of his little buggy, and he knocks it down, and he's like, "We all fall down." I'm trying to do that voice justice. And the other scene that I thought was kind of funny and clever, it's when Jennifer Aniston's character, she heads out to find the old man who had the stroke 10 years ago. The old man who tried to kill the leprechaun but failed. And in order to distract the leprechaun from going after her, they take all these shoes and they throw them out into the yard. And this is another thing. Like, one of the old leprechaun myths is that leprechauns love to shine shoes. He shines every dirty shoe he comes across, even if they're on the feet of his enemy. Like, for some reason it's like he's compelled, like he has no choice, he has to shine the shoe if it hits the dirt. It's funny and, dare I say, kind of a clever joke. He's just like, "Ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh." I wish I had more better stuff to say. I'm not sure if I've been interesting throughout this video. My sleep pattern has been really off lately. You want to know how much sleep I've been getting? I have been going to bed between 2 and 4 a.m. Sometimes I go to sleep at 5 a.m. and I sleep into like 10 a.m. That's been my sleep pattern for the past week. Just circumstance, and been feeling a little off lately. So, and I haven't done... I know I did the Death Wish review with Ty, but that was 2 weeks ago, and I filmed it 2 weeks ago with him. And it's been a few months since I had done the reviews, so it's been a little odd getting back into doing this. Sorry if I'm sounding a little odd, I'm just not sure how I've been doing for this review. Leprechaun overall, the directing's not that great as far as the horror element goes, and the comedy element I'd say is good about 70% of the time. All the actors, they do as good as they can with the type of director they had and the type of writing they had. And the cinematography, the editing, it's all very clunky. The music is, I think, probably the worst aspect of the film. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the ending. Towards the end of the film, it's revealed that the leprechaun's weakness is four-leaf clovers. Don't know where the writer came up with that idea to kill a leprechaun, but I rolled with it. Yeah, apparently the four-leaf clover is what will kill him, and they're told by the old man, Dan O'Grady, that, like, they go see him, and he's, just before he dies, he tells them, "You have to put it on his body. You have to have it touch him. Only then can you kill him." So they go find a four-leaf clover and a clover patch, which, when you see it, you can clearly tell it's a green light being shined on a clump of grass. And they find one, and that's when the kid yells, "Fuck you, Lucky Charms," and he just shoots the four-leaf clover, after sticking it to a piece of gum right into the leprechaun's mouth, and it causes his skin to melt off, and he looks in the end like a green goo covered skeleton. And then they throw the leprechaun down a well, and they fill with gasoline, and they throw a match, and this leads to a pretty impressive fireball explosion. Watching it, my reaction was, "Whoa!" And the next day, the police show up, and the camera slowly zooms in on the well. And I do admit, I think this was a pretty well done final shot. But then the credits start, and the music starts, and then it feels again like a half-assed straight-to-video movie. But the final shot is pretty well done, and we see the well with flames, and we hear Warwick Davis' narration say, "I'll not rest till I have me gold. Curse this well that me soul shall dwell, till I find me magic that breaks me spell." I liked that final line. I thought it was kind of chilling, and it worked. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Most of the Leprechaun's lines rhyme, and there's not much to them, just they rhyme, and they're kind of clever at times. So, that is my opinion on Leprechaun, starring Warwick Davis, Jennifer Aniston, and a whole bunch of actors that really didn't go anywhere. And the only one of these actors who never went anywhere, who deserves to be praised, is Mark Holton. He was great. And what's my rating for Leprechaun? I would say it's not great. It is bad, but in a so bad it's fun way. It's not terrible. If I have to give it a rating, because it's bad but it has enough fun qualities, I'm going to give it a 6.7 out of 10. If you're into good cheesy fun, if you have time to kill, if you like watching dumb horror films late at night, I recommend checking this out. Yet another movie I enjoy so much more than The Dark Knight.